What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, where me and my good friend Danny, Dr. Zayas God, we talk about horror movies and streaming shows. So one thing that's been going on for a while now is that Shudder has been putting out these VHS movies. I think the first one might have gotten release in theaters and maybe some of the other ones too. But this one just came out on Shudder October 4th. So we're going to be talking about VHS Beyond. Danny, the first one came out in like 2012. And you've been a fan of this series since then, right?
Pretty much. I remember, I don't think any of these came out in theaters. I think I saw the
Oh,
first one. I mean, 2012 predates Shudder. So I don't know where I saw, maybe Netflix. I don't know. I saw the first VHS, and I was intrigued by it right away. I love a horror anthology. We grew up with Creepshow and Creepshow 2. I grew up with Tales from the Crypt, staying up late to watch two Tales from the Crypt stories on a Saturday at midnight on Fox.
yep.
And then when I would go to the video store, I'd love the old Amicus anthologies,
Oh,
the Vault of Horror and the original Tales from the Crypt from 1972,
yeah.
Asylum, all those movies. So and I'm also a sucker for found footage movies. I am. I really dig. I am fully aware that not all of them are good, but
Yeah.
I think it is a subgenre that I am into a lot more than others
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to horror. And I think that kind of goes back to being the perfect age for the first Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
Like that was senior year, junior or senior year of high school, still trying to figure out exactly what the internet really was, trying to figure out how to use the internet, still trying to use my dial-up connection at home. And all of a sudden, the Blair Witch Project comes out with all the viral marketing, and I kind of got sucked into all that. And I loved the original. What's the other found footage franchise? Paranormal Activity. I love
Oh,
the
yes.
original Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think it's when they work, I think found footage works great because I think if they give you a good reason to follow the camera, if they give you a good reason for the things happening, it
Mm-hmm.
just works really, really well. And so the VHS movies, I've been a fan of most of them. I think it's almost universal to say that VHS Viral, which was part 3, is kind of like the goose egg of this franchise.
Yeah.
Um, but the first 2 are really good and have some really memorable stories in them. And then was it VHS 94? That was the first one to kind of, I think that might have been the first Shudder one.
Okay.
That was the one with Rotma, Hale Rotma, and that
Oh, okay.
one was, I think, one of the best uh, inclusions in this subgenre to begin with. I
Yeah.
just loved that, and I've been a fan of these VHS movies. It's like every couple of years we get a new one. It just kind of shows up on Shudder, and we're like, all right, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Uh, and for the sake of our channel, this is kind of a special one because there's a Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel segment in here. Kate Siegel makes her directorial debut with Stowaway, which is one of the segments towards the end. It's written by Mike Flanagan, so it felt very appropriate to get this on the show on a Saturday morning and talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've been doing this for over 3 years, and I think that we've covered everyone since the installment you mentioned, 94. And I think there was one in between that one and this one. So there's at least 3 VHS reviews now, including this one. There's been 6 sequels to the first installment. So there's 7 movies altogether. That's pretty crazy. That's kind of like Saw, where they're popping out one every year.
And if you go back, it's like a who's who of horror directors
Mhm.
who have taken part. Like David Bruckner, I think, was a part of the very first VHS movie. he has gone on to a ton of success. He did the absolutely incredible The Ritual on Netflix, which has one of the great monster designs in modern horror. And then
Yeah.
he did the Hellraiser remake that came out on Hulu, which was really good.
Oh,
So
The Night House.
yes, oh, the Night House as well, very good. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
that was one of our favorite movies the year that it came out. Probably like that might have been like what 2019, 20, or 21. No, we started this in 2020, so it had to be probably 2020 or 2021.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, that was really good. I mean, there's a lot of people behind the camera. It's interesting because I did a little research. I looked up who made each movie. Justin Long made one of the segments this time around with his brother. So I thought that we could kind of go through each installment or each little segment in this movie and just kind of talk about who was behind the camera and what we thought of them. So the very first one reminded me of a video game that I used to love to play. You used to work in a movie theater just like me. And it's funny, you were talking about the Blair Witch before. I remember working in the theater when Blair Witch came out and like sweeping up the aisles and stuff as an usher and being creeped
Mm-hmm.
out by the noises of the credits. But at that same exact time, there was a video game that was out in the theaters, like in the arcade called Area 51. You remember that video game?
Oh, very, very well. Between
Yeah.
that and House of the Dead, that's where most of my money went.
Yeah.
And
So the very first installment in this anthology this time, Jay Cheel's abduct. No. I'm so full of shit. That's the wraparound story. The first one is Jordan Downey's Stork. That reminded me of Area 51, especially the creatures. They looked like they were from that game.
yeah, but they also reminded me of House of the Dead. The way there's one particular uh, zombie in this scene that is running around with a chainsaw, and that is like right out of House of the Dead. I
Yeah,
do want to just before we get into Stork, I think it is important to set the tone of the wraparound because
sure.
the whole title of this VHS Beyond has to do with outer space and aliens and encounters, and it's framed unlike usually there is like an actual wraparound story. Here, Jay Cheel's adduction is really it's like a group of talking heads in their own right talking about a found footage, like they found video of proof of alien life. And one of the guys that's on there is Mitch Horowitz, who is the actual host of Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction on Discovery Channel, which I think is such a great touch because it makes it seem like you're not watching a VHS movie. You're watching like, oh, I just accidentally put on sci-fi and now or like the Discovery Channel and I'm watching, Alien Encounters or, Alien, one of those alien shows on the History
Ancient
Channel,
aliens. Yeah,
Ancient Aliens.
yeah.
Jay Cheel, by the way, he is somebody whose name we've said on our show before. He directed the Shudder series Cursed Films, which
Oh,
came out a year or two ago. That covered like the dark backstories of some like pretty famous horror movies: The Omen, The Exorcist, Poltergeist, etc. So I really liked just the way that this kind of gets set up, where it's and then there's really no rhyme or reason for why we just zip in and out of the actual segments as we go. And then we come back around to a pretty crazy little conclusion
yeah.
of Jay Shields. And I guess we'll come back to that at the end because it makes
E-
more sense to come back to it at the end.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and I find that sequence was the scariest out of all of these sequences. Like a lot of them are just kind of like fun. And when I was doing the research for this, I think it was Screen Rant or Screen Crush. I was reading one of their articles, and the author said that these segments kind of fall into the same kind of pattern, and he feels like that might be something they need to change by the next installment because it's kind of like these people go to some kind of scary location, things go crazy, and everyone starts getting taken out, and there's like a monster, and eventually like everyone gets killed by the end. And he said that like kind of that pattern can get kind of tiring after a while. I think it's fun, And I think that if you're watching this once a year, it's not that tiring, and you kind of just come to expect it. Just like with Saw, there's like fucking 10 Saw movies. They all kind of have the
Yeah.
same pattern. You know, if you know what you're looking for, it's fun. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think the VHS franchise lends itself to like a franchise binge. I
Yeah,
think these work exactly what you said. I think these movies work perfectly as like a once a year, once every 2 year little treat where you can just dive into um like these found footage 20 to 30, 15 to 20 minute stories. Some of them are better than the others, and you can kind of tune out or, leave the movie on while you're skimming through your phone, leave the movie on while you go use the bathroom, come back, and oh, okay, now there's cool monster on the screen, and and now we're in a new story. And I think it works good in that regard.
yeah.
Uh, there are sometimes you get those incredibly memorable moments that really just make you want to watch those segments. Like to me, again, I brought it up earlier, but like Ratma is one of the great segments I think in horror anthology history. It it,
Yeah.
it just resonated so much. There's, I think it was VHS 85 that had the Double Dare one. Do you remember
Oh,
that?
yeah, yeah.
That scene, that like segment uh really stuck with me. And I gotta be honest, to take it back to this movie, I thought there were a couple of segments that stuck with me here. Um, on the whole, I thought most of the segments were good. I think they were in that good to really good range. I would
Right.
say if I was ranking each segment out of 10, I think these segments would get on the low end, maybe a 6, and maybe on the high end, like an 8 to 8.5. Nothing blew me away at like a 10, but nothing was bad. And
Right.
it just made for a fun 100 minutes of, kind of engagement of the brain and like crazy like jump cuts and everything. Stork, for instance, I thought I liked this so much more than I thought I was going to like it.
Yeah.
Did you look up? So apparently, this was based on a piece of art by Oleg Vodivenko, and I don't know if like he did that, like he did like a painting of that monster we see at the end, and that like became the total inspiration for Kevin Stewart, and Jordan Downey co-wrote it, and then Jordan Downey directed it. Jordan Downey, by the way, did the
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving movies,
Yeah.
which are they're fun as long as you don't watch them for too long. They really
Okay.
run out of steam after about 15 to 20 minutes. But he also did this insanely gory, fun movie called The Headhunter, which is only about like 75 minutes, and it's basically like this like Viking lord who goes around beheading people, and it's fucking crazy. Yeah.
Okay. No, I thought that this segment was a lot of fun, and we can kind of say that at this point there's going to be spoilers for this movie. So, just if you don't want anything revealed from VHS Beyond, go watch it on Shudder, then come back and check out our review. I think the creature. I mean, it's great to see these zombies come running out, and it does remind me of Area 51, which I really loved. But I think the creature design at the very end, that's the best part of this segment. And I want to give credit. I looked up who wrote the article. It was actually Collider. It was a Collider article that I used for a lot of my
Mm-hmm.
information. And they said in that article that the fucking stork creature, because it is like this stork, like alien creature, was played by Dane DeLagro, who played the Predator in Prey.
Predator.
So I thought that was pretty
Awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I like the idea. I like that like they're going through this house, Resident Evil style, Area 51 style, House of the Dead style. They find this like what looks like a meteor that has cracked open, which immediately gave me uh, vibes of the 1988 Blob remake, which is amazing. And
Agreed.
of course, Creepshow. And I just kept thinking of Stephen King going, meteor shit from The Lonesome Tale of Jordy Verrill in the original Creepshow.
Right.
But yeah, I really dug this. I thought like the guys, like the soldiers acted, or the police, the SWAT team, they acted like soldiers. They're shooting the shit. They're like us in the video game. Like I like that we're calling them zombies, but apparently it's like they're like sucked out. Their brains have been sucked out. So at first you think they're a cult because they have like a mark on their head, but then I guess we find out later that the stork has been sucking out their brains, and they're just like these mindless like alien husks now.
Right.
But you get like the imagery of that one guy with the chainsaw. I was like, House of the Dead, let's
Yeah.
fucking go. I was like, I remember those scenes, like trying to
Yes.
shoot that guy and getting the big slash mark across the
Yeah, and
screen.
there's some great practical stuff. Like I know that wasn't CGI. Like it was all people in costumes, people with crazy makeup on. The creature was practical. There's one point where one of the cops has a chainsaw and they're like kind of taking down these creatures. There's one where like the chainsaw goes right up to the creature's head and you just kind of watch it slowly go through the head.
Yeah.
Really, really great stuff. But I think that what's really unsettling and really creepy about this segment is that, yes, we do see the stork suck out one of the cops' brains, very similar to like Starship Troopers, like the end where the one bug sucking out the guy's brain. Then it like regurgitates what it ate, just like a bird would, into a baby's crib. And you know that's been doing that with like human babies. And at one point, they even like show a baby in a crib, and it's like covered by a blanket. It's a puppet, you know, but still, it's very unsettling to look at. They pull this little sheet off the baby, and you see it's got like a little beak forming too, and that just kind of stuck with me and creeped me out for a while.
Yeah, I thought, like I said, when I saw the SWAT team, I was like, oh, I kind of seen this before. I felt like that was one of the other movies had a wraparound story that had like soldiers
Right.
involved, and I was like, all right, whatever, we'll see what happens. And then like the deeper we got into the house, the more I really got into the vibes of this. This is, no spoiler for later when we rank this was one of my favorites of the. I thought this was a super strong way to open.
Yep.
Especially for like an anthology where you're going to have multiple stories.
Yep. Totally agree. Yeah. And the next installment, which was their first Indian made film, like an Indian filmmaker, it was Virat Paul's Dream Girl. And I think that just based on the fact that they were using people from another country they haven't used before, I think that's very interesting to me. Now, one thing about India that you will know more, and you can kind of speak more about this. A lot of people just think India and they think Bollywood, but apparently there's like multiple genres, multiple different types of Indian films, where it's not just like Bollywood. There's other kinds of something wood, where it's like different regions in India, where they make specific types of movies. And like a Bollywood movie is very different from another movie from like another region. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but there's also movies that are like will be violent action movies and then suddenly have a large Bollywood dance number in the middle of it.
Right.
The movie that captured my heart over the last few years has been RRR, which I saw. I like traveled around New York City. I saw it 6 times in 5 different movie theaters.
Right.
And it's on Netflix if you haven't seen it. And it's just an incredible mix of genres, from a love story, a bromance, a historical epic, a action movie, and then all of a sudden they break out in an Oscar-winning original song and dance number, and it's amazing. And I have a movie that I have on my watch list that I rented, I think on Vudu or whatever Vudu is called now, Fandango at home, called Kill, which is supposed to be like the most violent movie ever made in India, like basically John Wick in India. And like Dev Patel did Monkey Man earlier this year. So India, because of RRR, I have watched a lot more Indian films than I thought I would ever watch, and I happen to love Indian movies. The ones that I've watched, I've been a huge fan of, and I like this segment. I thought it was.
I did too.
it was a step down in intensity from
Hmm.
Stork. So you're following these two. I just keep thinking of Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. What's
It's
the
kind of
word?
similar.
Yeah, paparazzi. It is. They're like these paparazzi guys, and they're looking to get some pictures, get some footage of this up and coming Indian actress who's like capturing the hearts of the world. And of course, because this is a VHS anthology on Shudder, it turns out that she is not what she seems. She's like an acid spewing alien that whose face peels off and uh, tracks down and kills basically everyone on the set of the movie that she's working on.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I enjoyed this. I thought it was very simple but very effective.
Right.
And I look forward to, like, I'd like to see what Virat Pal does in the future. As somebody who's become a fan of Indian filmmaking, I'd like to see more like straight up Indian horror.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's what I liked about this segment was that because they're using a filmmaker from India and they're setting it in India, even though they're going with this VHS conceit that they're like filming things with a camcorder, they're able to stick in a Bollywood or whatever kind of wood musical moment, that you
Yeah,
wouldn't expect to see in an anthology like this. So I like the idea of like, let's just do something different. Let's throw in something that people aren't expecting. That's what that moment's like. Then, like you said, when that main actress just starts flipping out and murdering people, we kind of have expected that. The gore is like crazy. One of the sequences I really liked was the main guy that you're following around. She rips off his arms by the very end. Then he's on his back. She's on top of him, and she peels off his face. Now we've seen faces get peeled off a lot in horror movies that we watch, but his eyes just kind of fall out of his head when she peels out his face. That's really disturbing and gross. So I liked that too. Um, so we can move on to the next one, which I thought was maybe the most ambitious out of all of them, but also the most predictable, which was Justin Martinez's Live and Let Dive. What did you think of that sequence? Oh,
I again, I want to make it clear. At worst, I thought these segments were good, uh, and I thought this was a perfectly good one. I agree with you. It was predictable. I did like. Now, let me ask you this: have you ever gone skydiving?
no. Have you?
Yes,
Oh,
I
okay.
have. So, as somebody who has been skydiving, I I tried to put myself into that plane, and I thought to myself, like, how fucking crazy would it be if you're up there 10,000 feet in the air and all of a sudden you look out the window and you're like, is that a fucking UFO? Like, what? And then you see, and then all of a sudden there's something on the plane as you're about to jump out. Like, I thought that was an interesting way to start the you have these friends, they're all up in the airplane. You have the one guy who's like, how about you, everybody jumps and then you drop me off. And I remember when I went skydiving with my ex-girlfriend, I remember telling the so for, if you don't know, when you go skydiving, if you've never done it before, you don't just go. Like, you're hooked onto a professional skydiver.
Right.
They control the chute and everything. So she was strapped to a guy. They moved towards the end. They jumped out of the plane, and at that point, I turned to the guy behind me and I said, $100 if you land the plane right now. And he looked at me and he went, we've come too far for that shit. And then whoosh, there we went.
Oh my
So
God.
there was a similar moment here where, like, the scared guy is like, just drop me back off. And I was like, oh yeah, I did that. But yeah, I liked that introductory part. For me, this kind of fell into, like, I don't want to say been there, done that, but like predictable territory. Once they landed on the ground,
Yeah.
it started to feel a little repetitive. Like,
Right.
run through the orange trees, run through the the field. Uh, these giant, like, four-legged, long-necked aliens that looked cool, but it at that point it just kind of became like an alien chase movie, and I was like, okay, it's good, but I like the first half of this segment a lot more than the second half.
Agreed. When you're watching these movies, it's kind of like watching The Twilight Zone, or I don't know, just something basically where you're kind of waiting to see what the twist is. Like, oh, how's this going to be a horror sequence? Because they always usually start off with like, okay, people are living in the normal world. Okay, here's the twist. This is the thing. And so for this, I'm starting to imagine what's going to happen. And I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be interesting if they're all like talking about jumping out of this plane? They're all excited. The main character's scared. And then they literally jump out and there's like no parachutes. Like, that's why they're just literally just going to sacrifice themselves to some kind of alien deity or something. I thought that'd be cool. Then they do the thing where you see the alien ship and then you're like, okay, well, they're going to like have some interaction with aliens. When they crash into the ship, that sequence I think is the most ambitious in this whole anthology, where they're literally just like falling from the sky. He's one guy's, his leg is cut off and he's just falling without a parachute, like screaming, like super intense stuff.
And I do want to compliment I everything you said, I agree with it. I do want to compliment, and you mentioned it earlier, the amazing practical effects that were used throughout, and the gore effects in Dreamgirl were really great. And then in this one, there are some amazing practical gore gags, like when he is trying to wake up the guy behind him, and then he turns around and there's this like a body with no head, or like whatever's left of a head. I thought that was like a great practical gore gag.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy gore. One thing that I've kind of noticed in horror movies that we've been reviewing recently and watching is they do this thing where like a person's face is kind of like splayed open or flayed open to where like the skin is on the sides and you see like the skeletal insides. And that happens a lot in this sequence because the aliens do this thing. The aliens have like a couple of specific attacks where their face opens up a little bit and they shoot a light at you. I think that they're kind of like scanning you. I don't think that does anything to you, but then for one of the friends, they stick out these two pincers out of their arms and pin him and then blast him, and that makes his face open up like that. And we see later, one of the things I thought was very effective about the sequence was the main character, he's with his wife, and he like kisses her before they're going to jump out of the plane, and you can kind of tell, you can feel the love. He finds her in that orchard, that orange orchard, and her face is splayed open like that too. So it's disturbing. I like when, because when you watch so many horror movies like we do, when you see certain kills, it's kind of like, oh, okay, this is like a decapitation. I've seen this a whole bunch of times. Or, oh, this person's been like stabbed in the chest. But when you see them do, even if it's just a slight change, we're going to do this kill a little bit different. And so like the flayed open face, it's something I'm seeing more in horror movies, but it's still kind of novel at this point. I liked that. I did kind of feel like it went on like a little too long. There was one point where the main character is trying to escape from the aliens, and he finds a guy that's in a pickup truck, and I'm like, holy shit, how many fucking movies this year are we seeing this sequence where it's like in a violent nature, Strange Darling, right? And now this guy's getting in this truck, and the guy pulls a gun on him immediately. I'm like, okay, well, we are in America, so this probably would happen. And he pulls a gun on him, and he says, okay, you got to do the count of 3, and then I'm going to shoot you. And I thought, okay, well, this actually be a very interesting way to end this, where he just gets shot by this guy in a truck versus all the alien carnage. The guy does shoot him, and his little finger's just dangling off his hand. But the aliens do get this guy at one point. I was bothered by the very end, because the very end implies that like he got like sucked up to the ship, and that like maybe he was being pulled into the ship. And what I do like about this series in general is they make it like this is footage that we found somewhere. And I know you can make the conceit of like, well, he got sucked up into the ship, and then the VHS or the tape or whatever fell out of the ship and it landed on Earth. But I feel like when the camera is like on a spaceship in orbit, it's kind of hard to say that it's like found footage at that point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
So we can go ahead and move on to the next segment, which was written by Justin Long and his brother, and then it was directed by Justin Long. Now, Danny, my thing that I'm going to say about Fur Babies is I feel like this doesn't fit in with this anthology at all. What do you think?
So it's really funny because that I saw a lot of that online where it's like somebody tweeted, I love that Justin Long's segment of VHS Beyond has nothing to do with aliens or anything else, but everyone's okay, but everyone's just okay with it because of how batshit crazy it is. And because Justin Long, the star of Tusk, basically made a spiritual sequel to Tusk.
Right. And he's
I will say,
kind of.
I liked this better than Tusk because I did not like Tusk.
I have not seen Tusk, but I've seen like Justin Long at the end of it, so I kind of know what happens. It's funny because he's kind of like a horror darling himself. Drag Me to Hell. I mean, starts out with what the fuck is the one? Jeepers Creepers, right? Barbarian. Like a year ago. Yeah, he's been in a lot, man.
Yeah, Tusk, of course. Yeah, he's built up. He's one of those guys like Patrick Wilson, where like you're like even before The Conjuring, like became like the It franchise. Like Patrick Wilson had been in like a bunch of horror movies. And you're like, oh shit, he's done like a few of these. Okay, and now you can like make an argument that they're like kind of secret horror actors. It's cool. Like I said, this was Justin and his brother Christian Long. This was batshit crazy. You have these like eco warriors who target this woman who has like she has commercials for her doggy daycare facility, and they're gonna break in and basically take her down because she taxidermies the dogs that have died, and they're like, that's an abuse of animal rights violation, and we're going to take her down in her doggy daycare. And it turns out that she does a lot more than taxidermy the dogs. She kidnaps people and effectively turns them into her dogs, her fur babies that she keeps locked up in the basement. And she has looks like either a brother or another, like maybe like, I think it's her brother. I think she says it's her brother.
She says it's her brother, yeah.
Yeah, who just is like this giant brutish guy who's there to like grab and kidnap the people so that they wake up in cages. And from there, it just gets really gross and really body horror, really into the body horror, like sewing animal parts to these people, latching their mouths with like doggy jowls and jaws. And yeah, I mean, the two friends that get sent in to investigate secretly get kidnapped, and then the rest of the team goes back like a week later, and it goes somehow even worse for them. They're either killed or also turned into giant fur babies.
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%, and I think it's kind of just funny that in a anthology where 5 of the 6 episodes or segments are all beyond about alien life, we get this just ridiculous outlier that is about body horror, and Justin Long basically saying, I want to direct a Tusk sequel without having to be in the Tusk sequel.
Right.
And yeah, I really thought this segment, just from like staring at the screen and going like, what the fuck? I thought this worked really well.
Yeah. Like what's good about these anthologies, and even just things that are in this anthology, is that they come up with new creative ways to have that found footage effect. And in this one, in the doggy daycare one, it's like, or the Fur Babies one, they have a segment where they show that dogs have cameras on their collars. So now you can do something from like a dog's perspective, which ends up being like a human dog at the end of the movie or the end of the sequence. But you still get it from that crazy perspective. To me, it's weird because this Fur Babies is almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which just celebrated its 50th anniversary this week. But it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but within the context of like suburban dog care lady context or whatever. So it was fun, and the woman that runs the daycare kind of stands out. She might have the standout performance of this anthology, where she's all like sweet and chipper, but can become very sinister very quickly. It's this great moment where she kind of reveals to the main characters, like, oh, these people got captured before they got captured because they asked too many questions like you. And like when she says that in that moment, it's real dark, and you feel bad for these two gone deep into her house.
Yep. What happened? Have we reached that part of the video where we've frozen again?
Wow, it wouldn't be a Lasercast recording if we didn't have some kind of on a Saturday now. I don't know what's going on with these. They used to stream well, and StreamYard costs more now too. But I guess it's kind of like in the theme of this anthology because like the footage cuts out.
Yeah, we had an alien interruption. That's all it was.
Yes, but I was pretty much done with Fur Babies at that point. I'll edit this out when it goes onto YouTube and when it goes into the podcast. But let's go now to the Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel segment. Let's talk about the Kate Siegel's directorial debut, like you said before, Stowaway. What'd you think of this one?
I really enjoyed this one. Also, I like I think the setups for these are really good. And I thought that in terms of standout performances, yes, you have the woman from Fur Babies, but then you also had Alana Pierce here. She plays this kind of like a reality star, kind of like a content creator who is out in the woods, out in like the desert, where they have reported seeing lights in the sky and UFO sightings. And she's out there and she's going to get that footage, and she's sleeping in the desert. It kind of reminded me of a movie we reviewed, The Outwaters.
Yep.
The beginning of it, where it's like, you're out in the desert and it's just like the being alone out in that part of the country makes it very weird. The Horror in the High Desert series also, those are on Screenbox if you ever get a chance. The movies Horror in the High Desert, those also have like a very similar vibe. And I also got a sense watching the opening of this. So she directed this. Mike Flanagan wrote it. So obviously this was, the two of them working together. And
Yeah.
we know from watching other Shudder series that Mike Flanagan is a tremendous fan of Lake Mungo. And I wonder if that was some inspiration for the writing of like the setting of this, where it's like one person on a camera out there, like just hanging out, uh, filming, and some type of crazy experience happens to
Yeah.
them. And in this case, Alana Pierce, the actress, she finds an alien ship and she decides to go in and record and see what's going on. And she gets met with some nanotechnology, and she gets, or what seems to be nanotechnology, and she's hiding. And then the next thing you know, she becomes a literal stowaway as the ship takes off. And you
Yeah.
get some, what I thought were insane visuals towards the end of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that Mike Flanagan is a very, very big name in horror at this moment. We base our channel on Oculus, The Lasser Glass, The Lasser Cast. Pretty much I think everyone will say that Mike Flanagan's like defining trait, or what makes him so appealing, is that he's able to evoke so much emotion in horror. He makes you feel for these characters, and him and his wife working together, I'm sure they collaborate on writing often. I remember like when they were doing Hush, they would like play out home invasion sequences to see what it would be like and how she could get out of certain scenarios if she was trapped in certain rooms. But this sequence is the saddest of all the sequences in the movie, and maybe in the whole series, to where there's a real profound sadness to this. There's a image that they use often in this sequence where she kind of holds up this like little plush keychain like reptile, and it's the last thing you see in this sequence. But this video, it's very clever too, because they make it like she filmed over a childhood birthday party. Like that's the tape that she chose, and we see little glimpses of that childhood birthday party because she's taping over it. And she's sitting at the birthday party. She's the only person we see, her as a child, at the birthday party. So it's this sense of like she's isolated, she's not connecting with others. People maybe don't want to connect with her. Then she's in the desert by herself. She interviews a couple of people. There's some yokels, and there's like this one teenage kid that doesn't take her very seriously. He's like, "You said you're a reporter, right?" And then once she kind of explains what she's doing, you don't see him again. Like he basically like left her. But you really get this sense of like isolated or like loneliness. And then that's basically the way that this ends, is her just like stuck on a ship millions of miles from Earth by herself, kind of being tortured in this crazy sequence. And it's not like this malicious thing where like an alien finds her and then tortures her or rips her to pieces. It's just basically that like every time she gets injured, these nanobots come down and like fix a part of her body. And they keep fixing her body by incorporating, I guess, DNA from other creatures. And so she is like completely transformed by the very end. And
Yeah.
I just think that like it was very sad and effective. I felt really horrible. Like I said before, there's a guy that gets his face ripped off and his eyeballs pop out. There are people that are turned into like dog hybrid creatures in this. But the person I felt bad for the most in this anthology was this main character.
Yeah, and I there's some visuals that Kate Siegel films at the end, like after she is fixed, that do very much look like the corpse, or like the image on the camera in Lake Mungo. So we know that like Mike Flanagan, we've talked about this before, where like Oculus being his version of 1408, Midnight Mass being I've seen a lot of people with the recent adaptation of Salem's Lot be like, this was unnecessary because Midnight Mass is on Netflix right now.
Right.
This felt like maybe him saying, I'm gonna write my own version of Lake Mungo, but as a segment for a VHS alien movie where it can just go on and like you said, leave it to Mike Flanagan to end be the sixth or the fifth part of an anthology, and make everybody sad and emotional towards the end. And I
Yeah.
really thought Kate Siegel did a great job directing it. I mean, and if this is something she's interested in, I think she obviously, from working with Flanagan and from that whole crew for as long as she obviously has the chops to do this, maybe for a feature. And I'd love to see whatever, obviously, look, it's Mike Flanagan, it's Kate Siegel. We're going to follow them wherever they go. But I'd love to see her like get a feature. And I'd love to see Alana Pierce do more stuff because I thought she was really good in this.
Absolutely, 100%. What works the best in found footage movies is when you get shots of things and they're not explained. Like there's no exposition where someone's like, this is happening because of this, where there's nothing like that. You just see weird imagery and you have to decide what's going on. When it's at its worst is when you have some kind of random character come in that's like spot on with the camera and they like explain some kind of lore to you or they explain the world to you. I hate that shit in these found footage movies. But when it's like you don't know what's going on, it's up to the audience's interpretation, and maybe you don't even get a clear image of the supernatural thing. That's chef's kiss. That's the best part of these kind of anthologies or like found footage movies. Like when she goes to go into the ship, for instance, you see the ship, and then there's a light that's like reflected in it, and she goes like this and she covers up the light and she's like, that light, that's from me, it's reflected onto the ship, and it's got this great texture to it where it's kind of like glass, but it's like round and it looks a little wet too. And I just love like just letting my imagination go with that. And then when you see like inside the ship, there's another part where there's like a little alcove and she sticks her hand into it and she talks about how it feels. And there's not like someone that's like, this is the communication system on the ship. Like, fuck that. I hate that. But like her just describing what it feels like, it's so good because it makes your imagination go. Now, it's kind of funny because the wraparound for this has a talking head. It is like people describing this one particular scenario that is on footage. This abduction adaptation sequence. But to me, the very last sequence in the wraparound, when they show the alien enter this guy's bedroom, that was the scariest thing.
They actually play the proof video, and
right,
and then they show it, and that's how it ends. And
right. So, do you know anything about, like, you were saying something about Jay Cheel at the beginning, right? What's the deal with Jay Cheel?
Well, he directed the Cursed film series on Shudder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So as far as you know, has he done any like features where it's like actual like stories and stuff, or is he like a documentarian?
I think he's done some shorts. I don't know. I didn't really. I just kind of like breezed through the IMDb of like who the directors were, and but I agree with you. This last thing is very unsettling, and there's a moment towards the end where you get like the alien on the screen, and it's like really fucking creepy. Yep. But then he like goes to like look inside the guy's mouth. And I don't know about you, but there's a specific movie that I thought of and a specific scene that I thought of for how this movie ends.
Tell me.
It reminded me of Nope.
Yes. Very good point. Yes. I see that.
With like the flapping of like it looks like the guy's throat, and then and it's just like things opening, and like you could tell he's breathing, and then all of a sudden he's not, like everything opens up, and then it just like hits the rock music and we go into the credits, and I was like, fuck me. Okay.
Yes.
And the imagery there reminds me of like when the alien in Nope started to suck up everything, and people are like trapped inside, like about to be digested.
Yeah. Oh, really good point. I didn't even think of that, but that's a great, great point. No, the imagery in that last sequence is so evocative and great because the camera quality is so poor. It almost gives vibes of like Nosferatu because like the creature is like creeping up on this guy's in the bed and it's a static shot. And it reminded me of like, old footage from like Nosferatu era time, and it even kind of gives that feeling because it's like this creature going up to a person in the bed. But then it also reminded me of like the Alien Autopsy documentary that was on Fox, but it's like inverted, where like the alien's about to do an autopsy on this guy who's still alive. Uh, really haunting stuff. I was thinking, oh, I'm watching this by myself. It's late at night. I'm going to be creeped out by something in this. That was the thing I was creeped out by, was that sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, I think it's time for us to rank these segments, Danny. Do you think you get the idea of the order you're going to put them in?
Yeah, I think so. You want me to count down to number one, or just list
Count
number
down to
one and
one.
count? All right. So, and I want to make this again. I want to just preface. I don't. If I would, when I rank something number six, it's not because it sucked. It's just because I thought it was good. It was fine, and I just thought other ones were better. Because I did not think there was a bad segment in this, and there have been bad segments in the VHS franchise. uh Viral exists. It's the lame duck one. That goes without saying.
Right.
So I put Live and Let Die at number six. i
Interesting.
put
Okay.
I put Dream Girl at number five. I put the Abduction at number four, mainly because of those last few seconds, which we just talked about. Then I had Fur Babies at three, a slight penalty just because it really doesn't have anything to do with the rest of these
Right.
segments. I put Stowaway at number two, and yeah, I thought Stork was my favorite. I thought this movie started with a bang, and I thought that was my favorite of the segments overall.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I think our list is pretty similar. Pretty similar. I I think I'd put Dream Girl as my last one just because I don't know, I didn't really feel anything for it. It was cool to watch, but it just didn't give me any kind of like emotion. Um Stowaway I would put as either two or three for my list. Stork, I think it just kind of feels like the most VHS segment out of all the segments, right? And then Fur Babies I would put lower on my list too, just because it doesn't fit. But I think it was like kind of the most fun to watch out of all of them.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I would give you that.
yeah. So very, very similar rankings. It was a lot of fun. If they throw up another VHS before Halloween next year, I'm there to cover it within
Yeah,
that first week with you.
definitely.
So with that being said, what are we covering on our pathway to Halloween now?
So I got ambitious and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna do a horror movie review every day," and then I literally have not done another one, and that's because I had friends come up from your neck of the woods, from down south. Um, Thankfully, and I say this with love, I drove my friend home back to the airport this morning. My liver needs a break, and I will now be able to. I have a 3-day weekend here in New York, thanks to Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, Italian Heritage Day, whatever we're calling it, and I plan on catching up. You mentioned something about gratuitous gore effects. I will be seeing Terrifier 3 this weekend, and I have been loving the stories that I've been hearing from people, the reviews that I've been reading, the people protesting outside. Love it. Um, I hope it is gorier than I am even imagining, and I cannot wait to see that. So you can expect a short review of that very soon. I'm either going to be seeing that today or tomorrow.
Damn.
Charlotte and I are also going to go see a little movie that you all know is back in the theaters this weekend. A Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh,
We're
nice.
very it is Charlotte's either 1A or 1B favorite movie of all time, along with Coraline. So, and I don't think I've ever seen it in theaters. So I like really excited to go this weekend.
Nice.
And then aside from that, I mean, we have covered Shudder's Horror's Greatest, which was a 5-episode series. We had Mike Mangiorno from the Pop Culture Man Children on for at least one of those episodes.
Right.
And what did we cover last weekend? I don't even remember now.
Well, we interviewed David Weiner on Thursday.
Oh my goodness. Yes, we did. I have to say that we had a great interview with David Weiner. I came home from the bar to do the interview and then went back out to the bar right after the interview. So when I say my liver needs a break, I am not lying. But yes, David Weiner once again joined us for another wonderful hour-long interview to talk about his upcoming In Search of Darkness 1990 to 94. If you love the In Search of Darkness 80s trilogy, what is it, 12 to 13 hours of 80s horror doc footage. He's getting ready to start getting into the 90s, and he promised us one of his longest long-form horror docs yet. So we are very excited. That interview is live on the channel. So yeah, we're trying to get through a very busy October. Next week, Thursday, is the beginning of New York Comic Con. Two of the people that we mentioned and showered with flattery, Kate Siegel and Mike Flanagan, are going to be at New York Comic Con this year, along with Carlo Gugino and Raul Coley from The Fall of the House of Usher. Charlotte and I are going. Saturday, they're going to have a Fall of the House of Usher panel. We're going to hear them talk about it. And we have plans. We already pre-bought our like meet and greets with them. So we're super excited for that. And there's always a ton of cool horror shit going on at New York Comic Con. I typically post a ton of footage. So starting next Thursday, you're going to be inundated with Comic-Con footage. And then at the exact same time, the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival is starting. And I am going to be going to at least one. I'm probably going to the Thursday night, not the 17th, but the 24th. One of the final films, The Rule of Jenny Pin, which is getting incredible advanced words. Has a great cast, and everybody who's seen it so far is talking it up as one of the best horror films of the year. Super excited for that. Yeah, so it's going to be another busy couple of weeks coming up.
Yes. Yeah, so guys, make sure that you subscribe if you want to talk about indie releases, if you want to give some praise to Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel, if you want to talk about David Weiner's really long horror doc, then let's talk about that soon. And subscribe to our channel, leave us some comments, and we appreciate you being around. We will see you guys next time.